7 years ago, an alien race called the Nonsuch attacked Earth and wiped out most of humanity. The survivors were forced to take refuge underground. Only a few stubborn and ignorant people chose to remain on the surface. For everyone else, the only way to return to the surface was to become a soldier and serve a 100-day term at a forward outpost. When the soldiers complete their training, as usual, a speech is given telling them they must fight for their future, and then a group of tanks transports them to the outposts where they are assigned. On the way, they watch as other soldiers drag people to a place known as Exilium. Eventually, the tank drops off a soldier at a forward outpost called Cerberus. However, this person cannot enter because the shelter door is jammed. Instead, he uses the stairs to climb up to the watchtower. There, a computer pricks his finger to verify his identity through a DNA scan. The system congratulates him, announcing that his mission has begun and reminds him of his responsibilities. He is responsible for guarding the defense line, monitoring the security cameras, observing the Nonsuch species, and if he sees any escapees, taking them to Exilium. Some performs a system check and contacts his commander, reporting that he cannot find the soldier he is supposed to relieve. The commander explains that the previous guard was evacuated for health reasons. He also reminds some that he must report every 12 hours and that leaving his post is strictly forbidden. Then Sam checks the mess hall and notices that the place is messy. He even steps on shards of glass scattered on the floor. He immediately gets to work settling in. He cleans up, organizes his supplies, and polishes the glasses. In the evening, he reports that everything is in order and asks for the entrance code to the shelter. Because the main entrance has been damaged, so he has to go outside and use an alternative door. When he enters the shelter, he finds a small Elvis figurine and places it on his desk. He spends several hours during the night standing guard outside. He stays alert against a possible alien attack, smoking his cigarette at the same time. That night, when he falls asleep, he has a strange dream in which he sees children dressed in white dancing around him. From that moment on, the same cycle repeats every day. The system wakes him up and reminds him how many days are left until his mission is over. Then he exercises on the balcony and takes a shower. Meanwhile, it becomes apparent that all the soldiers have a special tattoo on their necks. After that comes a system check, an area inspection, and a meal made with rather simple rations. During his first meal, he notices a shadow passing by and discovers that there is a mouse in the building. In the evening, he sends his daily report and receives the new bunker door code. But he doesn't mention the mouse. Every night, he continues to have the same dream: dancing children. Days begin to pass, and doing the same things every day, combined with loneliness, starts to affect his mental state. 2 weeks later, when he wakes up one morning, he sees the mouse sitting on his chest. Excitedly, he tries to catch it and put it under his helmet to examine it more closely. But as soon as he turns around, the mouse escapes. Suddenly, an alarm starts to sound, and the system reports that there is a Nonsuch attack near another forward outpost. He immediately runs to the balcony and, while watching the explosions in the distance, hears from the computer that all the refugees rescued by that outpost have been killed. As a precaution, he checks the security cameras again and notices something moving in the bushes. He immediately reports this to his commander as a possible alien threat. However, his commander does not take the situation seriously and says it's just an animal, because the Nonsuchs are not in his area. A few days later, while eating his rat meal, it comes to him again, and this time the man feeds it and makes it stay with him. Now, the rat has become his companion. He names it Doug. That day, the system reports a malfunction in one of the cameras and he has to go outside to perform technical maintenance. He walks around constantly on alert, and every animal sound he hears starts to get on his nerves. He finds the faulty camera and quickly repairs it. But just as he's about to leave, he hears a strange sound. When he looks around, he notices that a tree is covered in deep scratches. He continues on his way and finds a dead bird on another tree. The bird has a military dog tag belonging to Vac in its beak. In other words, the soldier whom some replaced. At that moment, the system detects a release of toxic gas in the area, and Sam quickly attaches a filter to his helmet, trying to stay away from the poisonous green smoke. However, he spots a strange moss on a tree up ahead. Curiosity gets the better of him, and to find out what it is, he removes his helmet and brings the moss to his mouth to taste it. When he returns to the observation post, he reports everything he saw in detail. However, his concerns are once again not taken seriously. The commander tells him that Vac is still receiving treatment at Exilium and that the bird was probably killed by some lunatic who lost his mind. Because none such animals do not attack others of their kind. When the meeting ends, Sam slips a knife under the wristband device on his arm. A few days later, Sam goes out for another area scan. Once again, the toxic gas alarm goes off and green smoke fills the surroundings. This time, he finds another dead bird on a different tree. At that moment, he hears those same strange familiar sounds again. When he turns around, he is confronted with a shocking sight. A strange creature. He immediately chases after it, but the monster suddenly disappears. Afterwards, Sam tries to report the incident, but since the defense perimeter is still intact, the commander once again assumes it's just an ordinary animal. Growing increasingly suspicious, Sam decides to search the shelter for clues. He is stunned when he finds a bloodstain on the wall behind the furniture. By bringing over a stool and testing the angle with his weapon, he realizes that Vac most likely took his own life. Desperately trying to find answers, he attempts to access the security footage, but the system denies him access. He then forcibly opens Vac's locker. Among his belongings, he finds an old radio and a sketchbook. The drawings depict some refugees, birds in the forest, Doug, and his own outpost. There is also a sketch that establishes a connection with a neighboring outpost called Graham. Unfortunately, Sam is unable to fully decipher the meaning of this drawing. Weeks go by, but he can't get the drawing out of his mind. During the next area patrol, he takes the notebook with him and tries to go to Graham. However, when he tries to cross the perimeter, the implant in his leg immediately reacts and Sam collapses to the ground in pain. He doesn't give up and climbs a tree, trying to catch the attention of the soldier at Graham's outpost by reflecting sunlight with wax dog tag. But nothing happens. When he returns to his outpost, he decides to review his own mission logs. Just then, the computer malfunctions and most of the screens go dark. At that moment, while watching himself on the cameras, he sees something standing behind him. He immediately turns around, but at that moment, the entire power system shuts down completely. Even though the device on his wrist shows that there has been no unauthorized entry, Sam still scans the area with a flashlight and rushes outside to find the creature. He also fires a flare to get a better view, but the only thing he finds is a few baby birds. Meanwhile, the power comes back on at the station and Sam quickly goes inside to report the malfunction and the presence of the creature. The commander says that the defense perimeter has its own power supply and that an alarm would definitely go off in such a situation. Still, he promises to send a technician soon to check the system. After the call ends, Sam tries to access the archives again, but all the old records have been erased due to the power surge. The only footage left is the last few minutes of video, and from this, Sam confirms that there really was something behind him. The next day, he tries to return to his routine, but starts to feel ill. He takes a few pills, but he's so tense and irritable that he drops and breaks a glass while trying to clean it. Just then, he hears a children's song coming from the cupboard and realizes it's coming from the radio. The person on the radio is Kerr, a soldier stationed at the neighboring Graham outpost, and he's asking about Wack. Sam says that he has taken Wack's place. Upon hearing this, Kerr immediately cuts off the connection. After a while, the electricity fluctuates again. Sam calls his commander and asks about the technician who hasn't shown up for days. The commander explains that in an attack on another outpost, no one survived and that the technician is now acting much more cautiously. After the call, Sam tells Dak that he no longer trusts their superiors. Days continue to pass, and Sam keeps working while still sick. During a new area scan, he sees something moving among the ruins. When he follows it, he finds a mother and her young child, wants to help, and offers them support to go to the shelter. But the woman is very frightened. She grabs her child and starts to run away. Sam immediately chases after them, but the moment he steps on the edge of the perimeter, the implant in his leg activates and knocks him to the ground. Afterwards, Sam returns and hears about an attack on another outpost over the radio. Exhausted and worn out, he no longer cares about the voice, and he tells Dak about the dreams he's been having. It turns out that no one dreams anymore, and those who do are considered insane. That's why Sam has never told anyone anything until now, because the only being he trusts is Dak. When evening comes, he turns to the radio again and tries to contact Kerr, but once again receives no response. This time, he decides to do something different and enters the forest at night. There, he encounters a deer and shoots it. The deer gets its antlers stuck in a tree. Sam then goes and eats the animal's meat without cooking it. This is also a sign of how much he has started to deteriorate mentally. The next morning, he shoots at boxes for fun. Then he climbs a tree and tries to reach out via radio again. Kerr is still ignoring him. This makes Sam so angry that he starts shouting. On his way back, he sees a rare flower blooming on the ground and pauses. Just then, the alarm goes off. Poisonous gas is spreading in the area. Since Sam isn't wearing his helmet, he is affected immediately and starts to feel unwell, collapsing to the ground. In the distance, he sees an area with fallen trees and the creature reappearing. Then he loses consciousness. The next morning, he wakes up feeling dizzy. He goes to the radio and sends a message to Kerr. A non-criminal type has infiltrated the outpost area and Wack has most likely been captured. Afterwards, he returns to the outpost and spends his days drawing and talking with dabbagh. He no longer goes outside. He prefers the safety of the outpost. With only 14 days left until the end of his assignment, the alarm goes off again. But this time, the one who arrives is the long-awaited technician, Messi. He confirms that he was delayed because of the attack on the other outpost. He witnessed the destruction of the building there, but he says he didn't see any bodies, because the cleanup crews had arrived at the scene before him and had already cleared everything out. When he sits down at the computer and sees the Elvis figurine on the desk, his eyes drift to the sketchbook. It turns out that Mac had been to this outpost before, and he says he thought Wack was quite an unstable person. Some shows Mac the footage of the creature that appeared behind him. However, Mac claims that this is just an image overlap caused by a system malfunction and that the person is actually Sam again. Then they move on to system checks, and Mac notices that the cameras in the defense perimeter are not working. This is strange because Sam had charged them just a short while ago. They start a system scan, and at that moment, dabbagh climbs onto the table. When he sees McDuck, he throws him with his hand. Sam, shocked, immediately runs after him, talks to dabbagh, and finally, his little friend opens his eyes, showing that he is still alive. However, Mac downplays the situation and says that Sam is just as crazy as Wack. These words make Sam so angry that he points his gun at Mac and demands that he open the archive records. This is against the rules. Mac refuses, believing that Sam won't be able to kill him, but Sam lowers the gun and shoots Mac twice. Now truly frightened, Mac apologizes to dabbagh and tries to access the archive system. He manages to get past the firewall, but 2 personal codes are still required to open the records. Sam still refuses to let go of Meg. At this, Meg wounds Sam with a screwdriver and a violent fight breaks out between them. Despite being injured, Sam gains the upper hand. But Meg doesn't just stand by, she strikes back with a hard blow to Sam's wound. Without wasting any time, Sam tries to suffocate Meg by pressing down on her breathing apparatus. At that moment, he notices that one of Meg's eyes is bright red and pulls his hand away. As Sam pulls back to grab his weapon from the ground, Meg recounts her encounter with an alien during her military service years ago. Their team's helicopter had crashed in the middle of the desert. Only Meg and one other soldier survived. When Meg went out to look for help and returned, she saw that her friend's ears were gone. Her friend had torn off his own ears to relieve the pain. When Mac was rescued, his lungs were filled with sand and his vocal cords were severely damaged. Because of this, he can no longer breathe without a device. Sam, thinking she might still need Meg, locks her in the shelter. Then she tends to her wounds, takes her medication, and even though the situation is completely out of control, she acts as if everything is fine while sending her report. When the commander asks about Meg's condition, Sam says that she fixed everything and left. Then she finally manages to contact Kerr and obtains the personal code needed to access the archive. When she opens the archive records, she watches old videos showing that Vex started his mission properly, followed the routine, and was friends with Doug. However, over time, Vex's mental health deteriorated and he caused serious damage to the computers at the station. This also explains the cause of the electrical failures. Sam calls Kerr again and tells her what she has seen. She also shares her own theory. She believes that the Nonsuch never actually existed. To this day, no one has ever really seen these aliens or the bodies they supposedly tore apart. That's why she believes the government made up these creatures. Its purpose is to drive people to exilium, because the world's natural resources have been depleted and the privileged classes want to keep them for themselves. In this process, the soldiers either hide the people remaining on the surface underground or eliminate them. This also explains why the mother and child ran away in fear when she offered to help them. However, Kerr does not believe this theory. A few days later, with only a week left until the end of her assignment, Sam begins to mentally unravel. She doesn't even notice that Doug is hiding inside a box. At that moment, the system announces that the Nonsuch advance has begun from the northern border. However, instead of fear, this alarm provokes anger in Sam. She throws the box in her hand at the monitor, then smashes the screen with something harder, completely destroying it. Then she starts looking for Doug, but she is confronted with a terrible truth. When she threw the box, Doug was inside and died. Killing her closest friend with her own hands destroys the last remnants of Sam's sanity. She goes outside naked, lies down on the grass, and starts waiting for the smoke. Just then, the creature she has been seeing for a long time appears again and starts chasing Sam through the forest. Sam finds the antlers left from the deer earlier and uses them to beat the creature in a fit of rage. In the end, she manages to kill the creature. However, when she checks the corpse, she learns the devastating truth. This creature is actually Watch. His madness had turned him into a monster. Determined to pursue the truth, Sum returns to the station, grabs her gun, and goes to Meg. She no longer believes anything Meg says. She tells her that her lies drove Watch to madness. Sum believes that spreading fear among soldiers and thugs is part of the government's plan. Meg, with an indifferent attitude, tells Sum to leave her alone no matter what she does. All she wants is to return to her family. But Sum does not let her go, because she still needs Meg. She wants to shut down the energy system of the defense perimeter. If this system is shut down, none such will be able to get inside. But since Sum doesn't believe they exist anyway, she doesn't care about this. She ignores all of Meg's warnings and finally threatens her, demanding that she explain how to disable the system. Then, Sum calls Kerr again and tells him, "Let's put an end to this madness," saying that she will visit him. She packs up all her belongings, leaving behind only a piece of paper with her own face drawn on it. Afterwards, she releases Meg. Meg gets on her motorcycle and leaves the station. Sum, on the other hand, burns her military dog tag and buries Doug in a properly dug grave. Immediately after, she runs toward the forest, and when she reaches the defense perimeter, the implant in her leg triggers pain. Despite the pain, Sum endures it and, as Meg described, finds the power cables and digs into the ground to disable the system. This action triggers the alarm, but Sum smashes the device on her arm, completely silencing the system. At the same time, all the screens in the station go dark. A few minutes later, Graham arrives at the station and is surprised to see the doors open. When he goes upstairs, he realizes the place is completely trashed. Everywhere is covered in blood and organ remains, but there is no trace of Kerr. At that moment, his ears start to bleed and ache unbearably. Hearing a high-pitched scream, he turns toward the window, and that's when the truth hits him. The none-such species really does exist, and since the spaceship's defense ring has been disabled, they have launched an attack on the area. And what's more, it's his fault. He starts to run away, consumed by guilt. As he passes through the forest, he runs at full speed to escape the attacks of the spaceships. Meg appears again and saves him. But then a none-such appears. It's massive and disgusting. It attacks the vehicle and kills Meg by ripping off her head. Sum, horrified, starts running again. Dodging the attacks with agile moves through the forest, he finally reaches his outpost. But he can't open the door, because he needs a new code. Luckily, he manages to activate his wristband and gets the new code, allowing him to enter. He runs to the cell and locks the door. He hears screams coming from the corridor. An unbearable pain starts in his head. But when he sees that the creatures are trying to break through the walls to get in, he immediately tries to hide. Still, the creature finds him and opens its mouth right above him. At that moment, Sum fires his weapon.